Great. Morning, everybody. My name is Joe Wrights. This is another episode of Marketo-Fu. Today, I want to talk about the last episode we talked about lead scoring, which the ultimate purpose of lead scoring is to provide marketing qualified leads. So, how does that look in Marketo, and what do you do? The most basic thing is you want to send a hot lead alert or an MQL alert, whatever you want to call it, to the appropriate salesperson when this happens, when someone passes your threshold of however many points you decide for what you think is a marketing qualified lead, which is going to vary unique to your business, which is part of the scoring model you set up in the last episode. So today I'm going to take you through kind of what that looks like in Marketo for a global basic MQL alert program. So here we go. Cool. Alrighty. So the first thing you'll notice is I'm in the ZOps folder of my little Center of Excellence area. And basically, again, following the naming conventions, and then the cleverly named MQL Alert program. So within this, there's just two folders, one for the actual email itself, the MQL Alert, which is kind of redundant how the naming works, so you can name it whatever you wanted. Actually, from a naming convention standpoint, I screwed up. It would be 01, just to go along with the Smart campaign. Just get in the habit of that. But basically the alert, and this is my alert, there are many like it, but this one is mine, is actually that's a terrible way to show you. It's just a very basic, serves up basic lead info. This one's pretty detailed actually, but these could be as long or as short as you want. But the thing that I want to draw your attention to is, obviously, general email best practices, have your pre-header, have your logo, whatever, make it look official. But what you can do in Marketo to make this kind of sexy is drive it with tokens. And, so anytime a lead fills out a form or becomes a hot lead, any of these things that we have on them, we'll be able to report on. So this is a basic template we've used at Fathom. There's a lot more things you could do different, or add tokens, or take some away here, depending on your business. But what we have here is the basic scheme is, we have the heading for what it is. So the basic stuff: name, company name, lead source, industry, lead source detail, acquisition program, and state. And then a few other things like, if they were a result of a part of your retargeted or paid advertising strategy or paid search, we could put a term in here to show the original source. We can link to their SFDC ID if you're using a Salesforce. Any level of detail. If you have a field for it and it's useful for your salespeople, we can provide a token that will show up in this alert, so they can get a very good snapshot of what's going on here. The last thing about this alert I just want to focus on is we can look at what we generally do is we show what the last interesting moment was, but then by using a couple fields and concatenating the values together with a separate Smart campaign, which I'll show you how to do maybe tomorrow, is kind of daisy chain what has happened to this lead over the course of their lifetime, like what led up to them becoming a marketing qualified lead, and that whole collection of interesting moments would show up here. So that's a pretty comprehensive alert. And then generally what we say, what we try to drive through any sales organization, what I've always tried to do in the past, is when you get one of these, it doesn't do the marketing organization or the company as a whole any good if you just generate a marketing qualified lead and don't do anything with it. So depending on how you have your RCM set up or anything else you can do to try to enforce this, we generally try to make sure that sales marks this either as accepted or rejected within a limited period. So in this example, I said 2 days. And then another thing about this alert is salespeople generally won't care about what MQL, SQL, SAL, unless like it's something like this and that's how they see it in Salesforce and it makes sense to them. So I would just make the subject line something basic like, hey, you got a lead, you got 2 days to follow up, so you should do that. Maybe make some money. I don't know. It's up to you. Something like that. So that's the basic alert and the scheme there. The Smart campaign, though, is really easy. And again, this is just super basic. You can't use tokens, unfortunately, in a smart list like you can a flow. So what I have here is saying if the score is changed and it's this lead score, it could be depending on how you're doing your scoring fields. You could have several different scores here. It could just be behavior. You could do demographic, although that wouldn't make a ton of sense for MQLs. I've done it also where there are unique things, like for a university where every school, like the business school, the psychology school, the architecture school, whatever, they all have different scoring fields. So you can track someone's interest in each one separately via score, which could be based on web activity or email consumption, whatever. But basically, select what score you want to monitor, and you could add more triggers for several all-in-one smart campaign. Skipping the change right now for is not, I want to go to the new score is at least. This is your threshold. So your threshold, I've seen some that are like 30 points. I've seen some that are 1,000 points. I've seen some that are 100 points. It doesn't really matter what your threshold is. It matters how you built your scoring model and what activity is going to add up to be this threshold at a minimum. So generally, there's no like one set best practice, but generally you want this to take place over 3 to 5 like big interactions. So you don't want to generate a MQL just for someone clicking a link in an email and filling out one form, unless of course it's a contact form. So we could have scores change. We could drag in another filter for fills out form, and then is the contact. I don't know if there's one in here. There's actually not a contact form in our sandbox, but you get the idea. You could say it could be either of these triggers firing. But the other thing that you'd probably have instead of adding in a fills out form is you'd probably set the scoring threshold for filling out the contact form to be 100 points or whatever your threshold is. Now, this change is not piece. Something I've run into in the past is if you have leads that are in a database that have big scores, and you also have like we looked at in our model the other day, where we had an inactive scoring program somewhere. So scoring decay over a set period of time. If there's no activity, it's going to modify their score in a negative way. If we're just listening for at least 100, say their score is 120 and they get minus 15, now their new score is 105, it's still going to qualify for triggering this alert without this change is not one of these values. So you can just add a comma for however many negative scoring activities you have, but just that's a good gotcha. So been there, done that. All right, and on to the flow. This one's easy. Actually, we don't have all the tokens that I referenced in this email built out yet in our sandbox, but basically you would just say, what the email is. So ops MQL alerts, period.01 MQL alert. That's the email. And then based on our CRM integration, we could just assign it to the appropriate lead owner. So typically in Salesforce or whatever CRM you're using, you probably have some logic that's assigning some lead routing based on whatever. I've seen it done on zip code, state, country, even occasionally. Whatever logic is driving your lead routing internally, Marketo will know to use that. And then just another best practice to be in the habit of is copying your sales ops director or leader, whoever that is, just to make sure that they're also able to see these if they want them. And then you could add an interesting moment if you wanted to get fancy and say something like milestone, this lead was marked qualified. Type on or whatever. I think that's the token. I might be wrong, but you get the point. You could timestamp when this happened, and that's just another great practice to be in. Okay, so if I can figure out where my face is, here we go. So that was a very quick primer on how to just set up a basic alert program in Marketo. So this has been another episode of Marketo-Fu. Looking forward to talking to you guys on a future episode, and yeah, we'll talk soon. Thanks.